Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, the circle of Jerusalem's peace continues to grow, with the Kingdom of Bhutan and the State of Israel jointly announcing the establishment of full diplomatic relations. The United States formally removed the Republic of Sudan from the list of state sponsors of terror as part of a deal to realize peace between Khartoum and Jerusalem, among others. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has urged the European Union to discard the plight from its member states, Greece and Cyprus, apparently insisting that EU-Turkish relations are more important. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the United States under the leadership of the Trump administration for its unyielding efforts to roll back Iran's regional aggression and thwart the Islamic Republic's frantic race to a nuclear bomb. Speaking alongside visiting U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, Netanyahu re-highlighted the presiding regional consensus among Jerusalem, Riyadh, and other Arab capitals in all that pertains to curtailing Tehran's malign regional and global aspirations.
Under President Trump, the United States and Israel are working together closer than ever before. We cooperate together to foil common threats. We cooperate together to bring about peace. And in both areas, we've produced amazing results. The Abraham Accords have brought about historic breakthroughs for peace with 4 Arab countries, the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and now with Morocco. And this is creating enormous excitement in Israel.
Amid a projected shift of power in Washington, the Israeli premier sought to signal to the next presumed Biden administration that a change of policy vis-à-vis Iran would spell detrimental consequences for an already volatile region and beyond.
And our close national security cooperation is also evident in our efforts to roll back Iran's aggression and stop its frantic race to the bomb. Instead of coddling the tyrants of Tehran, President Trump has adopted the policy of maximum pressure. This is a policy that I have to say is widely supported across the Middle East. Both Israelis and Arabs praised President Trump when he pulled out of the failed Iran nuclear agreement, when he reimposed and beefed up tough sanctions on Iran, when he took out the Iranian arch-terrorist Qasem Soleimani.
The American National Security Advisor, for his part, relayed the significance of President Trump's so-called maximum pressure campaign, emphasizing a simple fact acknowledged by a majority of Western intelligence agencies, that the Ayatollah regime allocated significant funds accumulated from those it attained as a result of the 2015 nuclear agreement for the purpose of advancing its malign foreign policy.
The mullahs in Iran have been contained. And what's critical is their revenue has been reduced to the lowest levels in history by the largest economic pressure campaign ever instituted since the end of the Cold War. And what that means is the money that was coming from the JCPOA, the $150 billion in sanctions relief, that didn't go to help the Iranian people. And we have nothing against the Iranian people, and I know Israel doesn't have anything against the Iranian people. But the money that could have gone to them to help their middle classes, to help their people, was instead given to terrorist proxies throughout the region to wage war on Iran's neighbors, and that's been cut off.
Both Netanyahu and O'Brien also seized the opportunity to magnify the positive trend of peace in the region, welcoming Morocco's decision to normalize relations with the Jewish state, which was announced on December 10th.
When Israelis and Arabs agree on so many things, it makes sense for the world to pay attention. After all, we live in this region. We know something about it. And as long as Iran continues to subjugate and threaten its neighbors, as long as Iran continues calling for Israel's destruction, as long as Iran continues to bankroll, equip, and train terrorist organizations throughout the region and the world, and as long as Iran persists in its dangerous quest for nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them, we shouldn't go back to business as usual with Iran. We should all unite to prevent this major threat to world peace. I say world peace because today the Islamic Republic of Iran is still a neighborhood, a nasty neighborhood bully. But if unchecked, Iran tomorrow will arm itself with nuclear-tipped ICBMs that can target Europe and America, and it will become a global bully, which will endanger everyone. All this must be prevented, and all this can be prevented.
bin Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdouk. Others will follow because the way to peace is far better than the way offered by terrorists, strongmen, and radical clerics.
It is interesting to know that a wide-ranging number of senior political officials in the Kingdom of Morocco, from both the governing coalition and opposition, voiced dismay over the newly established relations with Israel. While admitting the king's role in the decision, officials from the ruling Justice and Development Party, which holds a similar ideology to the one promoted by the ruling Islamist AK party in Turkey, described the agreement as a sad political move. Nevertheless, they sought to highlight that their king, Mohammed VI, maintains steadfast support for the Palestinians and his opposition to what they refer to as the Zionist occupation. In other yet related news, the United States formally removed the Republic of Sudan from the list of state sponsors of terror today after 30 consecutive years of crippling sanctions and international scrutiny, coupled with demands for fundamental reform. It is important to mention that the removal from the blacklist comes after Khartoum officials threatened to withdraw their decision to normalize relations with Jerusalem unless Washington kept its promise. Consequently, following today's removal, Sudan is now expected, as part of its deal with the Trump administration, to pay $335 million to the United States victims of terror, compensation that relates to the Al-Qaeda bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998, which claimed the lives of 220 people. Separately, negotiations are ongoing in all that pertains to Khartoum's declared intention to normalize relations with Jerusalem. Meanwhile, ahead of today's developments, the leader of Sudan's Revolutionary Front, Al-Hadi Idris, declared his intention to support Khartoum's normalization accord with Jerusalem.
لو كان هنالك مصالح ومنافع تعود للسودانيين من خلال التنبيه فمرحب به. وطبعا برضو السودان ما استثناء. يعني مسألة التدبير بقى في المحيطنا العربي ده كلام قديم، وكثير من الشعوب تبعت مع إسرائيل بأسباب ولمصالح مختلفة. في النهاية نحن نعيش في عالم يعني تحكمها مصالح.
Al-Hadi also highlighted Khartoum's reasoning behind striking a deal with Washington, which includes admission to the previous Sudanese regime's sponsorship of terror groups and payments to families of terror-related victims.
للإدارة الأمريكية بأنه ترفع العقوبات، لأن العقوبات دي عقوبات كانت مفروضة على النظام السابق، والشعب السوداني تضرر كثير من هذا العقوبات. بعد سقوط نظام البشير ما كان شايفين فيه مبرر لأنه اسم السودان تكون في هذه القائمة، لأنه وجود السودان في هذه القائمة السودان بيتضرر منه باعتبار أنه كثير من المؤسسات والاقتصادية وكثير من الدول تتحاشى التعامل مع السودان، وبالتالي.
Turning now to New Delhi, India, where the Kingdom of Bhutan and the State of Israel have jointly announced the establishment of full diplomatic relations. A special signing ceremony was held at the residence of Israel's ambassador to India, Dr. Ron Malka, who was joined by the ambassador of Bhutan to India, Major General Vetsop Namgyel. TV7 learned that the effort to establish relations between the two countries was not connected to the Abraham Accords. Rather, it is a result of extensive talks between Jerusalem and Thimphu over the course of this past year. It is interesting to further note that the Kingdom of Bhutan remains relatively close to the outside world, actively maintaining relations with only 53 other countries, a list that does not include China, the United States, Britain, France, nor Russia. Turning to Ankara, where Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has urged the European Union to discard the plight from its member states, Greece and Cyprus, saying it is extremely wrong for EU-Turkish relations to be held hostage by Greek and Cypriot pressure. The Turkish leader, who earlier rejected the European Council's decision to formulate sanctions against Turkey as hollow of substance, has now seemingly changed his dismissive tone.
Köklü Türkiye-Avrupa Birliği ilişkilerinin bir iki devletin ayak oyunlarına esir edilmesi son derece yanlıştır. Avrupa Birliği, Yunanistan ve Güney Kıbrıs Rumları tarafından kasıtlı olarak işine çekildiği cendereden bir an önce kurtulmalıdır.
President Erdogan's remarks were made after the European Council instructed EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell to submit a report on the state of play concerning the EU-Turkey political, economic and trade relations and on instruments and options on how to proceed. Once this document is formulated, the new sanctions will be adopted by the European Council in a future meeting scheduled to be held on March of 2021. Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to lift up the Kingdom of Bhutan in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brethren worldwide, in addition, of course, to our ongoing prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. Jonathan Hassan wishing you a Shavua Tov Umevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.